Okay, so we're going to look at feet and inches. So first up, we need to know how they are appropriately abbreviated. So inches, the proper way to abbreviate the word inches is with an I and an N, and typically lowercase. So that stands for inches. And then feet, once again lowercase, you have an F, and then you have a T. So IN for inches, FT for feet. Now, as with a lot of things that you're going to be learning here with medical math, there's some conversions that you have to memorize. So the first conversion is one you may be familiar with. It is that 12 inches equals 1 foot. So if you, back to elementary school days, if you used one of those rulers, wood rulers, plastic rulers, usually the ruler is a foot long and you see the markings on it for 12 inches. So something to remember is that an inch is smaller than a foot. So there are more of the smaller units. So there's 12 inches in 1 foot. And that will be helpful when we get to looking at how we actually perform some of these calculations a little bit later on. So now let's fill out this chart um, without using a calculator, because sometimes you can do some of these conversions in your head. The more that you become exposed to them, the more that you memorize them or become more easily recognizable, it'll be easier to do this. So we're looking at the top here. So we're looking at the feet. So 1 foot, we're going to look at this one first. So how many inches are in 1 foot? Well, that's exactly the conversion factor that we just memorized. So we know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So then let's move along and look at the next box. So next up, we're going to look at 2 feet. So how many inches are in 2 feet? Well, if we know that 1 foot has the 12 inches there, then we could just add another 12 inches. We just double it. So 2 feet would have 24 inches in it. Then moving along to 3 feet. So that means we have 3 feet. That means we have 12 inches, but there's 3 of them, so we would have to multiply. So 12 times 3 would be 3 feet, or we could do 12 plus 12 plus 12, and that is 36. Whoops, if I write correctly here. So that is 36. So you can see that each time as we're going up, we're adding 12. Each time we're going up, we're adding 12, because 12 inches make up 1 foot. So now let's look at 4 feet. So what do we have to do? We have to add another 12 inches. So 36 plus 12 would be 48. So there are 48 inches in 4 feet. And then again, how many do we have in 5? Moving up, adding 12, 48 plus 12 gives you 60. So there are 60 inches in 5 feet. Then how many are there in 6 feet? What do we have to add? I have to add another 12 inches for another foot. And now that gives us 72 inches is 6 feet. And then 7 feet, what do we do now? You're right, we have to add another 12 inches for a whole nother foot. And 72 plus 12 then is 84. So this chart right here will be very helpful for you. And when you're looking at doing the exam, it might be helpful for you to write something like this on the paper. So that way, then you know, and then don't necessarily need to use a calculator to do conversions, as we will see here a little bit later. So documentation. So when it comes to the medical field, documentation is of utmost importance, because documentation needs to be accurate, especially when you're talking about feet and inches, because doctors' treatments will be based on a person's height, and it also be based on their weight, and we'll learn how to read those a little bit later. So there's two different ways that you can document height. So one thing to know is that feet are always documented first. So feet come first and then followed by inches. So here's the two ways. So method number one is, you'll see it listed as, blank feet, blank inches. So our example here is 5 feet, 4 inches. Okay, so we have, the 5 would be here, the 4 would be there. So 5 feet, 4 inches. That's what we would see. All right, so let's look at this question. It says, how tall are you? So it says, write your height below using this method. So my height is 5'6". So what I would write here is 5 feet, 6 inches. Okay, so that's method number one. So go ahead, take a little bit of time and fill in what your height is. The next method, method two, is an apostrophe method. So you might have seen this one. So the first apostrophe, so one apostrophe, represents feet, and then the double apostrophe represents inches. So the example you'll see with that is this right here. So that means basically 6 feet 2 inches. So it says the next question is, how tall is the person sitting next to you? Well, you might be watching this at home alone. So go ahead and write your height using method two, and I'll show you mine. So once again, I'm how tall. I'm 5 feet 6 inches. So I would write this doing 5 feet, one apostrophe for feet. I'm 6 inches. That's denoted by the two apostrophes. So two different ways to write. Either one will be correct. So let's look at the next section, which is about how to pronounce height. So you can see there's the two different methods are represented here. So the first example right here, you would pronounce that 5 feet 8 inches. Okay, 5 feet 8 inches. That's method one. The next one looks like method two. That would be pronounced 6 feet 4 inches. And now you can see that we have some fractions, so some partial inches here. So this third example would be pronounced 4 feet 3.5 inches. So 4 feet 3.5 inches. Last one here is pronounced 5 feet 10.75 inches. 5 feet 10.75 inches. So now let's look about how we would write these. And so we're going to write method one and then method two. So the first example says, write 3 feet 4.25 inches below. So let's start with feet, right? Because we write feet first. We have 3 feet. Method one is using the FT for feet and the IN for inches. So here we would write 3 FT. Okay. Now inches come next. How many inches does the problem ask for? So it says 4.25 inches. So we'd write that as 4.25 inches. So that is writing 3 feet 4.25 inches using method one. Method two is the apostrophe method. So how would we write that? Once again, the feet is always first. So we do 3, 1 apostrophe for feet, and then 4.25 inches, 2 apostrophes. Let's go to number two. We have 5 feet 6.5 inches. So method one again, and we always start with feet. So how many feet? We have 5. So 5 feet. And then how many inches? 6 inches. So 6.5 inches. 5 feet, 6.5 inches. So now method 2, once again the apostrophe method. We're going to go 5 feet, 1 apostrophe for feet, 6.5 inches. 2 apostrophes. I don't like the way that looks. Let's switch that up. 2 apostrophes showing inches, right? So on the exam, if you're asked to write down feet and inches, which hint, hint, you probably will be, you need to pick a method. Either one will be right, whichever one makes the most sense to you. So now let's do some conversion practice here. So the numbers 1 through 10 right here, okay? So this side, you can see that we're having to convert total inches. So we have total inches into feet and inches. On numbers 11 through 20, it's asking us to take feet and inches and then convert them into the total number of inches. But we're going to focus on 1 through 10 here first. So I'm going to erase that line. I'm going to see if I can zoom in here a little bit. All right, so first one, we'll do number 1 here. We have 65 inches. So how in the world do we figure out how many feet and inches are 65 inches? So there's a couple different ways to do this, okay? So let's do it first by doing division. So we have 65 inches, but we need to convert it into feet. The way we convert inches into feet is by dividing by the total number of inches that are in a foot. And we know the total inches in a foot are 12. So what this would look like is we would take 65 inches. We would have to divide that by 12. Okay. So now we have to do this calculation of how many times can 12 go into 65. All right. So I'm going to look and say, I'm going to try 5 first. So I'm going to try the number 5 for 5 feet. So 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus the 1 is 6. And then so 65 minus 60 is 5. Okay. So this is how you would look at this. Oops, didn't mean to delete that. So on the top, this top would delineate how many feet we have. So that means we have 5 feet, that goes into the 65 inches, but we have this remainder. So that is the number of inches that remain. So 65 inches is 5 feet, 5 inches. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is to remember, I'm going to scroll back up here. We can scroll up to this chart that we created. So in this chart that we created, we can see, oh, there's 60 inches and 5 feet. So if we remember that, we can come down here and we can say, okay, the question is asking us for 65 inches. So 65 inches. I know that there are 60 inches in 5 feet. So if you take 65, take away those 60 inches from that chart above, and you have 5 remaining. So you know 60 inches is 5 feet, remaining is 5 inches. So that's another way that you could figure that out. So the first way is you either have to do the division, okay, or you can write your chart and just do a simple subtraction there. So let's erase and let's try number 2 together. All right, so number 2, we have 38 inches. Okay, so let's just do looking up at the chart. So let's slide back up here to that first page. And so 38 inches. All right, so looking at the feet, which number can give us, we're looking for 38 inches. So what is the closest number of inches without going over? So the closest number to 38 is 36. So we know then that that's 3 feet. So let's scroll back up here, or we're going to go down. So we know that it's at least 3 feet. But our question is asking us for 38 inches. So we have 38 inches, but we know that the 3 feet here, right, is 36. So we subtract that. How many is left? 2 inches. So that's 3 feet, 2 inches. So that's a method. If you write that chart on your paper, that can be helpful. But let's look at if we just did our simple division. So 38 total inches divided by how many inches in a foot? 12. Because remember, we have to divide inches by inches to give us feet. We know this goes in 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. Subtract, and then we have 2. Okay, so remember the top number then would be feet. So we have the 3 feet. I'm just going to erase this here again. So 3 feet. And what do we have remaining? 2. So that's 2 inches. Okay, 38 inches is 3 feet, 2 inches. So hopefully this way is helping you. So you can, because everybody's mind works a little bit different with math. So hopefully this is helpful. One thing you don't want to do when you are figuring out and converting total inches into feet and inches is you don't want to use a calculator. Because if you were to get your calculator out and if you were to um, take, let's do 66 inches as an example, okay? So we're trying to find out 66 inches, what that is equal in feet and inches. If you were to take your calculator out and you were to do 66 divided by 12, okay, go ahead. If you have a calculator, go ahead and do that, okay? So take you some time. I'm going to tell you right now that on your calculator, what the answer is going to be is 5.5. Okay, but let's do the math here as I've been showing you. So 66 divided by 12. I know 60 inches is 5 feet. So I'm going to do this math. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 1 is 6. And then I have 6 left. So 6 inches, 66 inches is 5, because we know that's right. We know that that's top number shows feet, so that we know that's 5 feet. And then the leftover inches is 6. Okay, so that's the answer. But if you looked at your calculator, you saw that it was 5.5. So what some people are tempted to do is they're tempted with using the calculator to put the 5 feet 5 inches because it relates to what the calculator says to do. But do you have any idea why the calculator is telling you it's 5.5? Okay, the reason that it's telling you that it's 5.5 feet is because of this number right here. Okay, I'm gonna move this off and circle it. It's because of the 6. Because what is half a foot? And remember, 12 inches equals 1 foot. So what is half of the 12? Half of the 12 is 6. So the reason why the calculator is telling you that it's 5.5 is because the 0.5 here is actually half of a foot, which is 6 inches. So in your calculator, the values are in tenths. So it's like 5/10, okay? On when we're talking about inches, that is measurements of 12. It's in twelfths because we have 12 inches in a foot. So what I will tell you is when you have these types of questions right here, okay, that are numbers 1 through 10, when it has the total number of inches, you do not want to use a calculator because um, they'll be incorrect. So whatever you're tempted to write is going to be wrong. The only thing that's going to be accurate is the number of feet that it gives you. Okay, so we're going to know that the number of feet, so the 5.5 on the calculator, we know the 5 is correct. So we could use that here. We could use that here. It wasn't letting me circle it. So we could use that up as the 5 feet, but then we have to find what's the remaining number. And that's why it's so important to do your math like this to get the 6. So then you know it's 5 feet, 6 inches. So let's go, we'll do one more example of these, and then we'll go to numbers 11 through 20. I'm just going to, sorry, delete that here. So let's look at number 3, 46 inches. So let's scroll up once again. So 46 inches. If we made this chart, which one of these is closest to the 46 inches without going over? Once again, it's the 3 feet at 36 inches. So I'm going to go down. We're going to say we know that it's 3 feet because that's 36 inches, but we have to take the total number of inches, 46, minus the 36, and that's 10. So 3 feet, 10 inches is 46 inches. Let's do it using division. So 46 inches divided by 12 inches in 1 foot. Again, inches divided by inches give you feet. We know that will go in 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. That gives us the remainder of 10. So once again, we've got the 3 feet. Then we've got the 10 inches right there. Now, one thing that you can do to make sure that you're getting the correct answers on these is just do the reverse order of operations. So we can take the 3 feet and say, okay, so we have 3 feet. Let's multiply that by 12 to get inches. So how many inches are in 3 feet? Oh, we know that's 36. Add the number of inches, 46. 46 matches 46. So boom, we know that number is correct. 3 feet, 10 inches is correct. So you can always double check your answers to make sure you're getting it correct. Now let's go to the other side here. So we'll look at these numbers 11 through 12. So numbers 11 through 12 here, we're having to do the reverse. Kind of what I just showed you how to do when you're double checking your answers from going total inches to then going into your feet and inches. Now we're starting with feet and inches and having to figure out the total number of inches. So we have 6 feet, 5 inches. So how many inches are there in 6 feet? Well, we know there's 12 inches in a foot. Let's multiply that by 6 because we have 6 feet. So we're multiplying by 6. And that gives us 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 72. So we know that that is 72 inches But that's just the 6 feet. What else do we need to look at? We need to know that there's 5 inches. So now we have to add the 5 inches, and 2 plus 5, 7. So that's 77. So we have that there. These problems are helpful to use your calculator on when you're going from feet and inches into total inches, because your calculator will not steer you wrong here. Okay, so 6 feet 5 inches is 77 inches. And remember, if you would to write that chart up above onto a paper, if you're trying to figure it out, let's scroll up and see what 6 feet is. So we're going up here. 6 feet is equal to 72 inches. So we could come back down and be like, okay, 72 inches I know is 6 feet, and I have 5 more inches to add to it. That's 77. So that chart could be very helpful for you to write on your exam when you're being tested on these things. Let's do another one. We have 3 feet 4 inches. So once again, we have to convert the total number of feet we have into inches. In this case, we have 3 feet. So we have to take our 3 feet, multiply that by 12 inches, because again, there's 12 inches in 1 foot, but we have 3 feet in this example. 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 1 is 3. So we know that there's 36 inches, okay, in the 3 feet. But we're not done once again, because we have to look back at the problem, and it's asking us about 4 inches, 3 feet, 4 inches. So we have to add the 4 inches. Now that gives us 40 inches. So 3 feet, 4 inches is 40 inches total. Let's go back up and let's look at the chart if you were to write the chart up there. Okay, 3 feet, 4 inches. So how much is 3 feet? So let's scroll back over here. And we're like, okay, 3 feet is 36 inches. So we can come back. So we know we have the 3 feet is the 36 inches, but we have 4 that we have to add to it. And once again, that gives us 40. All right. Hopefully this is making sense. Let's do one more before we move on. Okay, so number 13, we have 7 feet, 1 inch. Let's do it the reverse. Let's go look up at our chart that we made. So 70, okay. So we have up here that we know that 6 feet is 72 inches, and we know that 5 feet is 60 inches. And we know 7 feet is 84 inches. So this question is asking us for 7 feet. We know that's 84 inches, but we have to add how many? Yep, we have to add that 1 inch. And that gives us a total of 85 inches by using our chart. Let's do it by using math here, though. Let's do it by multiplication. So if we have 7 feet, we know that there's 12 inches in a foot. Okay, 7 times 2, 14. 7 times 1 is 7, plus the 1 is 8. So we know that 7 feet then is 84 inches. Once again, we have that 1 inch left. So that's 85 total inches. All right, hopefully this is helpful. If you guys have any questions or anything, though, please don't hesitate to reach out. So now we're going to go and look at how to read a measurement. Okay, so this measurement is basically looking at a ruler, and the ruler, you can be able to read someone's weight. This method also is going to help you be able to read a patient's weight as well. So let's look at this ruler. So the very first one, it says here to use the ruler. Okay, you're using the ruler where the measurements are 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and 3/4 of an inch. So it's these markings: 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and 3/4 of an inch. These are the markings you're going to be responsible for knowing and for writing. Okay. So I want to explain though what this ruler is that you're looking at, because you see all these other little tiny lines in between. So we have the 0 inch and then we have the 1 inch right here, and all these lines are in between. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and that last one we would count would say 16. Each one of these lines are a 16th of an inch in this example. And if you're like, whoa, how do you know that for sure? You can go through, and I'm going to erase that there, but you can go through and count the spaces in between. So we know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So all these little lines break up from 0 to 1 inch into 16ths. Each one of those lines is a 16th of an inch. So how you could write that on your ruler here is you could do that this first line is 1/16. The second line, 2/16. Third line, 3/16. The next line, 4/16. Then we have 5/16, 6/16, 7/16, 8/16, 9/16, 10/16, 11/16, 12/16, 13/16, 14/16, and 15/16. Then finally, the last one is 16/16, which that's why that equals 1. Okay, so these lines here of 1/4 and 1/2 and 3/4 is just basically, this one is really 4/16, 8/16, 12/16. But if you remember, when it comes to fractions, you always have to simplify. So 4/16 equals what? Well, if you divide each of those by 4, that gives you 1/4, which is why these are the same right here. But we say 1/4 because that's simplified. Same as the half. The half is really 8/16. But if we divide that by 8, then we have 1/2. Then coming over to this side with the 12/16, 12/16 equals, okay, so we can put 4 into each of those, right? We're simplifying that fraction. That's 3/4. So that's why I say when you're looking at the ruler measurements, only do the 1/4, the 1/2, the 3/4. Let's put some of this into practice. So now you have an actual picture of one of those old school wooden rulers that have the inches here. So it says, what are the measurements below? So the first one we're looking at is this guy right here. Okay, so what I like to see is when you're looking in between your numbers. So we know we have 1 here, we have 2 here. Do you notice longer lines on the ruler? It's like this is a longer line, this is a longer line, this is a longer line. So now remember, we're looking at those 3 lines in the middle. What's the first line? And if you forget, go back up here. The first line is a quarter. So we're going to come back here. And so that's going to be a quarter. The next one is what? 1/2. The next one is 3/4. So always remember up here, I'm still going to delete all this stuff here. Okay, make it nice and clear. So the first big line, quarter. Second line is a half. Third line is 3/4. So remember, first line is 1/4. Second line, 1/2. Third line, 3/4. That's what you have to remember on these. So looking at our ruler, that arrow is pointing to that second line in the middle. So what is that measurement? Okay, what is this measurement here? Well, we've got the 1 and then the second line. So that's 1.5 inches. Good job. Now let's look at the arrow down below here. So we're looking at this guy next. So again, mark where your long lines are. We've got long line here, here, and here. So those are the long lines in between 2 and 3. Which line is it? It's the first line. The first line is what? First line is a quarter. So, but it's the first line after 2. So this would be 2 1/4 or 2 1/4 inch. Let's look at this next one. Next one here. So we've got 3, we've got the 4. Do we see the longer lines? You see this one, this one, this one. Okay, which line after 3 is it? It's the first, second, it's the third one. The third line is 3/4. Woohoo! So let's go back up. So it's the third line after 3. So 3 3/4 inches. Fantastic. And last but not least, what is that last arrow pointing to? It's pointing to the 5. It's right on the 5. So that would be 5 inches. Okay, so that's how you would read a ruler if you had one that had all those other little lines on there. There's always longer lines. Okay, so let's do this one. Now it's saying we're going to use the ruler below. We're going to find and mark the measurements that we see. So number 1 is saying 66 1/4 inches. Okay, so let's find the 66. Okay, so 66 inches is this guy right here. Now, once again, do you see the long lines in between 66 and 67? Yep, we've got one here, one here, one here. So 1/4 inches. 1/4, is it the first line, the second line, or the third line? It's the first one. So this is the 1/4 mark. So 66 1/4 inches would be here. That would be our number 1. What about number 2? Number 2 is saying 66 1/2. So we're still at the 66. Which one of these marks is the half? It's the second one. It's the one right in the middle between 66 and 67. So 66 1/2 is number 2 right there. Okay, number 3 is asking us 67 inches. Well, the 67-inch mark is right here, 67. So that'll be number 3. Okay, now let's look at number 4. So 67 1/2. So again, let's mark the long lines in between the 67 and 68. So we've got the 1, the second one, and the third one. So 67.5 would be what? It would be that second one. So 67.5, number 4. Next one is 67 3/4. So remember, 3/4 is the third line. So we got the 1, we got the 2, there's the third line. So then 67 3/4 would be right here, be number 5. And then the last one, number 6, 68.5. Well, here's 68. Let's mark the big long lines. Oh, looks like our ruler ends there, but that's the first line, which would be a quarter. Second line would be a half. So we're 68.5 right here at the very, very end would be number 6. So make sure you remember the first line, once again, is a 1/4 inch. The second line is a 1/2 an inch. The third line is 3/4 of an inch. So now this is asking us to convert the measurements below into feet and inches. And we can write it out using method 1 or method 2. So we have 66 1/4 inches. 66 1/4 inches. And so we have to turn that into feet and inches. So what this is asking us to do is very similar, almost exactly, as we are having these questions here, the total number of inches, but converting into feet and inches, excuse me. So let's look at how we're going to do that. Okay, so we have 66 1/4 inches. So it's the same thing that we did up there. We can take 66 inches divided by the 12 inches in a foot. And I know that goes in 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus the 1 is 6. Okay, so I have 5 feet 6 inches. Okay, but we're not quite done yet because this is saying and 1/4 inches. So this would be 5 feet 6. Okay, because we got the 5 feet. We got the leftover 6 inches and 1/4 inches. That's how we would write that. So let's do the next one. I'm going to erase this so we can have space again. So we have 66.5 inches. So 66, it's the same as what we got before. We know that that's 5 feet 6 inches, but now we have a half. 5 feet 6.5 inches. And you could write it at method 1 if that makes more sense to you. Either one is fine. So hopefully kind of by now you've realized that 5 feet, and you've probably memorized this, 5 feet is actually 60 inches. Okay, 60 inches so far. So 67 inches. Okay, if we know that 5 feet is 66 inches, we could take and come over here and be like, oh, we've got 67 inches. So 67 minus, whoopsie, getting ahead of myself. So we got 67 minus the 60 inches that are 5 feet. We have 7 inches left. So then that could be 5 feet 7 inches. Or if you compare 2 and 3, so the first one is 66.5 inches, and then we have 67 inches. It's only a 1/2 an inch more than number 2. So if we have a 1/2 an inch to 6.5, that gives us 7. What do you think 67.5 inches looks like? Well, I bet you're right. So 5 foot 7, because it's again very similar to up above, but now we have a half. So don't forget to add the half. Next up, oh, we've got 67 again. I know that's 5 feet 7 inches, but now it's asking me for 3/4 inches to add. And then very last, we have 68.5 inches. Well, 68 inches is just one more than 67. So instead of 5'7", that would be 5'8". 5'8.5 inches. Okay. So hopefully that is very helpful there. Now, one thing that I'll come back and look at here is I'm going to just erase all of this. Okay, I'm just going to erase this on this ruler because this could very well be weight. Okay, so imagine that then this right here is 66 pounds. This, 67 pounds. This is 68 pounds. And if you had a marking pointed right here, how many pounds would that be? So let's look at those 3 longer lines again. First line is what? 1/4. Second line is 1/2. Third line, 3/4. So if this was where the person's weight landed up, that would be 66.25. Oopsie, not 1/2, silly, and 1/4 pound. Okay, so reading weight this way is the same as what we've been doing here when we're reading a ruler. So let's go and now let's look at height because it's very similar to the ruler with weight. You always have little lines. So let's look just at this ruler. So this is another ruler, but now it's looking at height. So imagine that you're standing up against a wall and there's a ruler behind you. What you notice about the numbers is that they increase in value from the floor, right? Because the taller you are, the higher number of inches you have. So you can see that 58 then goes to 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. So it increases as you get taller. So that's very important to remember because if you come and you look at the little lines in between, okay, let's look at those little lines in between. We have the 3 lines once again, but now we're going up in height. So that very first line is going to be 1/4. The line in the middle is going to be 1/2. And the third line, once again, is going to be 3/4. So it's like we've turned the ruler, right? Instead of it being on its side and being horizontal, now we're going vertically up. So we're increasing going up. So knowing that, let's do a couple of these problems. So it says for each problem, we're going to number 1, write the total height in inches. So total height in inches. And then number 2 is we're going to convert that height into inches into feet and inches. So exactly the same processes that we have already done, except now we're just looking at a ruler measuring height. So this guy right here. So the first arrow, what is that in line with? It's in line with this right here, which is on the number 63 exactly. So that's going to be 63 inches. So that's the question number 1 answer, but we also have to answer question number 2, which is to convert that height in inches into feet and inches. So the same thing that we've done on the very last couple pages. So 63 inches divided by 12 inches in a foot. That's going to be 5. That's going to get us 60. And so then we have 5 feet, leftovers 3 inches. So we're going to have 5 feet, 3 inches. And again, you can write it like method 1 or method 2. Let's go to the next one here. So which arrow is pointing, is this guy on? It's the first little line. The first little line is coming back down to here is 1/4. So that would be So it's that first line above 61, 61 and a quarter inch. Okay, so part 2 is converting total inches into feet and inches. So once again, we could do our division, 61 divided by the 12. We know it can go in 5 times because that's once again 60. Now we have 1 left over. So we know it's 5 feet. We've got 1 inch left, but we have more than 1 inch because if we write the 1 inch, don't forget the quarter. So 1¼ inches. Let's do one more, and I'm going to get rid of this so we have room. So this next arrow, okay, it's on a line between 59 and 60. Which line after 59? It's 1, 2, 3. So we know that this is 59. The third line, 3/4 inch. Okay, now we've got to do our math once again. So 59 inches divided by 12. And it's not quite 60 for 5 feet. So it's going to be 4. And then we've got 11. So this is 4 feet, 11 inches. But again, don't forget the little dude up here, 3/4 inches. So that's how to read your height. And I'm not going to do the other ones. I'll let you do that on your own time. And so again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. When you're trying to do these calculations on your exam that you have, it will be very helpful, hint, hint, to make sure you write this chart down on your paper. You can very easily just kind of do it like this. And you can say like 1 foot is 12 inches, 2 feet 24, 3 feet 36, and then you can do so on and so forth on your test. So then that way it helps you be able to do some conversions easily. You will have a calculator that I will give you that you can use on the exam. But again, be cautious about using calculators on these types of questions here because you don't want it to mislead you. Because remember, your calculator works in tenths, whereas when we're talking about inches to feet, it's in twelfths. All right. Hope this was helpful, and reach out with any questions.